Good morning. It's Erika of the Knit Kind podcast and Grapefruit Gardenia Designs. I am here with a pattern launch, an object I'm wearing, and a few tips for showing up with your family, friends, neighbors, community. So next week, I think we will be back to our regularly scheduled programming. I have a lot of things to say and show you about wool and knitting and what's on my needles and what's in design process and things that are moving into testing. But I did the long episode at the beginning of the week about the intersection for me of life coaching and knitting, and I got a great response from people, and it was really meaningful to me to get that, because this is stuff that takes up a lot of space in my brain, and I have felt personally better, healthier, and more fulfilled all week because I recorded that and because of the response that people gave who listened to it. So thank you if you did. If it's not your thing, that's totally fine too. We're going to be back to more fiber and knitting, and that's it. If it is your thing and you want to share it with others, I would love that too. So I don't always remember to say, but I will today. If you like this video, if you like my designs, if you like the life coaching things, if you like this podcast, please give it a like and subscribe so that other people can find it as well. So getting right to it, Mending Fences is now live. It's released. I published it actually a little bit after midnight. Don't ask me why I was up after midnight, but I was doing a lot of that computer work that I'm trying to get through and had not last night. So it is 20% off for the week starting today, Friday, March 7th until Friday, March 14th, 2025, 20% off in Ravelry with the code LONGWOOL. LONGWOOL, all one word, all in caps. I will put that in the description of the video. And if that's something that is helpful to you or encourages you to purchase the pattern or share it with others, I hope that you will. If you're curious why it's long wool and you haven't watched the whole episode, please do check that out. I think it was episode, 36 maybe. Go back and look. It says Ashford Heights Farm and long wool and Mending Fences cowl. And just to really recap quickly, if you have stash yarn that you want to use, great. By all means, please do that. If you have yarn you want to buy that's specific, please do that. But if you're undecided and this appeals to you and you're curious about breed specific wool and you would like to try a long wool, I did design this because I paired this stitch pattern that I loved with the long wool, which to me was the perfect marriage. I'm going to show you another version that I have in progress that is not with long wool, so that you can see what that looks like, and that's obviously entirely a possibility, but it's different. It's different. Things look different in different wool and different breeds and with different stitches. I'm not trying to be overly political in any way, so you take what you want from this. But I am knitting another Mending Fences cowl, and this is what it looks like. Okay, I think we've got some fences to mend, which is an understatement and not something I'm making light of at all, but sometimes there's some comfort in knitting with intention. And so this is my Mending Fences cowl that I am knitting in stash yarn, because I told you that's important to me to work through my stash. I have Stonehenge Fiber Mill, which has recently closed, and I have some of their beautiful merino. I think it's merino. It's fine wool. It is non-superwash wool, and my local yarn store used to carry this before they stopped wholesaling, and I got a bunch of it for color work, and it was sitting in my closet, and I don't have a sweater quantity. I just had a bunch for accessories, and when I was looking, these colors jumped out at me. Oops, they're literally jumping out of my bag right now. They say spring, they say Sweden, they say Ukraine. They are beautiful together, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to do the yellow with one of the blues and the white, and then I really liked, because how I did this with the gray background and the two purples, I really liked the idea of doing the white background with two blues. And then what I thought is, in a sort of symbolic way, I would incorporate just one row of the yellow as well. So the way that this is knit, this will end up over am I gonna get this right? Over my right shoulder, and this will be literally over my shoulder. It will probably fall about there. And I sort of like the idea of, metaphorically, that we carry each other with us, and that stripe will be over my right shoulder when this is eventually done. So see, it's gonna be like this. And so here's a little bit of the difference. This is a difference between a cushy fine wool that is worsted to maybe semi-worsted spun. It has much more squishiness to it. And while I love squishiness, I love squishiness in a cowl around my neck. I love it in a sweater. I love it in a shawl. It's gonna be very different from this. And I absolutely adore the long wool here, which has more drape to it. And it's the way that the elongated stitches work with a long wool. They are literally long, pulled, flat, sleek. There's some halo to it. Absolutely, there's halo to it, but they are going to look very different even after blocking. And let me see if I can, oh, this might not be a good idea. Sorry for the little wobble there, folks. But what I want you to see here, so you see how these are? Now, this is not blocked, okay? But see how these are? It's very different. These are squishy and plump, and these are long and sleek. And so that's why it was intentionally designed for a long wool. You can knit a beautiful one in a plump wool. It's gonna be different. So while I'm here, as promised, here's what the back looks like. And I really am quite enamored, actually, with the back. I think it is really beautiful in its own way. It's definitely the reverse side, but I just really, really like how the back looks. And while I've got you traveling, ready, we're gonna travel again. You can see it with the long wool, and you can see it's almost like garter stitch, but obviously there's a little bit more to it, like stripy garter stitch. And so that's what the back looks like. And then you've got your selvages up the side. And then on this side, you have your I-cord bind off. So I did have 3 testers work on this, got different feedback and valuable things, put some more video links in. So if you're knitting the pattern, they're linked in the pattern. Anybody can actually watch the tutorials. You don't have to have the pattern to see them. They are in 2 places. There's 2 playlists on my channel. One has mending fences specifically, so you can look at a playlist for mending fences, and it's going to have the video about the design, as well as, right now there are 4 tutorials, I think. One is about carrying yarn up the selvage, and then there's different ones about blocking in progress and trying it on, seaming, and then I think I recorded one that just showed you how to drop the extra wraps for elongated stitches while I was doing it. So the last thing about that pattern is that someone had asked me about whether you could not seam it and just keep it as a shawl. Absolutely, here are my tips if you decide that that's something that you want to do. My first tip is, if you're knitting it in this weight or whatever you're knitting it in, realize that you will very likely want to make a longer rectangle. This rectangle by the schematic is about 38 inches long before you turn it and seam it. If you, well, I have a tape measure here. If you knit 38 inches long, this is exactly 38 inches. It's a little bit out of frame, I realize, but let me just show you. If you put that over your shoulders, it's gonna be, well, it'll be like this, right? And I guess you could put a shawl pin in here, but it would be close to your neck and a shawl pin, so you'd essentially be most likely wearing it the same way, just pinned instead of seamed. So if you want to make it into a longer shawl that is really gonna wrap around longer, overlap potentially, and maybe be a little looser around your neck, you're gonna wanna knit longer than 38 inches, and in order to knit longer than 38 inches, you're gonna need more of your background color for sure, and possibly more of your 2 contrast colors, depending on just how long. I wanna say that I knit about, I don't know, a third to half of the contrast colors, as opposed to an entire skein just about of the background color here, which just left a little bit of room for gauge differentiation and swatching. So if you knit it, that's the first tip. You're gonna need more of the background color. The second tip is that the cast on edge is done simply so that you can seam it with the mattress stitch. If, however, you want it to be open and not seamed, you might want to consider a different cast on. That one will roll a little bit, number one, and number two, it just won't look as finished. So the bind off is an I-cord bind off. So one thing you could do is you could do an I-cord cast on and make them match. Another thing you could do is you could work a little bit of ribbing on both ends. You might want to play around if you do that to find a ribbing that you think is a nice match for the stitch pattern. And I don't know, you could just grab a book and get creative. I love finding different edgings. So you could even do it where you do a different edging along it after you finish it. You could knit it with just the very plain, like a long tail cast on and a regular bind off, and then you could put an edging on both ends. Show me what you do. I'd be curious. I love that patterns can be a jumping off point for individual creativity as well. So I think those were the main tips that I gave if you were to do that. I wrote them in a response on YouTube, so if you're looking for it, hop over there. You might see a longer response there. But I hope that answers it. So let me also rewind for a second and say what I'm wearing so I don't forget. This is sort of a happy coincidence, but this is my 700 fence posts cowl in the DK weight. There are two different patterns, DK weight and fingering weight. They obviously knit up to a different effect if you're using fingering or DK, and if you're using heavy DK to worsted, which is what this is the Junction Fiber Mill Making Tracks in a more subtle one with blue. And the Farm Fresh and the natural. And the reason I wore this one today is because I've got a big basketball game for my school tomorrow, and this is the shade of blue that we wear. So I love the Ravelry. I love the other color, blue as well, for most things, but I don't wear it a lot in March, let's just say. And so I'm wearing that version today. This is the Birdsong colorway, which has that beautiful, bright, kind of royal blue and gradiates to a deep navy blue. Also, you might have heard me say 700 fence posts, and then this is Mending fences. We got fences in the title of our knitting patterns. It just so happened, but this was named, and it's kind of interesting that in some ways they go together. This was named after a line in a song about two friends and how they count the distance between their houses by the number of fence posts. There were 700 fence posts between the two homes, and this is about mending fences. So I think when you buy your first house, somebody might tell you good fences make good neighbors. It's probably true also, but you need to tend to them and mend them, and also it helps you understand the distance between two people or between two homes. So, okay, we've got what I'm wearing. We've got the pattern with the release code, and also Teresa from Ashford Heights Farm will be on Sunday, March 9th at the Wayland Festival, the Farm Fiber Days. So if you want to see this yarn and get it in person, I've also had at least one person reach out to me that they wanted to get it and they were far away and they were disappointed, and they emailed Teresa and she's already put that in the mail and they've already received the yarn. So I don't know how much will be left after Wayland. I don't know, there might be other colorways. She will have these exact colorways, from a different shearing at the Wayland Festival. So if you have your heart either set on those or you want to explore breed specific yarn that maybe you wouldn't have picked up or noticed otherwise, that's why I do these patterns, to shine light on and promote small farms, sustainable farming, wool that is local with a smaller carbon footprint that can help support our local farms, and do it in a way with some shared values. And so what did I want to share with you? What else? Well, I talked on Monday all about energy levels and how people show up and what it means and how you experience the world yourself and then in your interactions with other people. And I found myself after doing that thinking about, well, I could talk for days, weeks, months about this. And obviously it's very specific to every person and where they are and what they're doing, as opposed to giving blanket tips. But I also thought, you're listening to this and you maybe want to know some tips that are more general. So I thought I would give you a few today, or offer them, and you can take them or leave them if you want. But I think that more people want to experience in their lives level 3 and level 5 energy than level 1 and level 2 energy. Level 1 energy is that victim energy, that things are happening to you. Level 2 is conflict, that you're always just fighting. And let me tell you, even if you feel really good about what you're fighting for, standing up for, it's exhausting, it's draining, right? That's the whole catabolic energy of detracting and draining. And that level 3 energy is that if you get what you want and someone else does, that's great. And your first thing is to kind of fulfill your need, but also you'd be really happy if someone else fulfilled theirs as well. And that level 5 is about everyone winning or no one winning. And so when I think about how we show up and how difficult times are right now, I think of a few things that, I'm not going to say they're easy to do, but if you think about them and you're intentional about them and you practice them, they don't require a certain level of book intelligence. They don't require money. They don't require resources that people don't have, other than being able to take a breath and pause and think about how they're showing up. And so the first thing to do is to think about asking open-ended questions when you're having conversations. So rather than having yes or no questions, from something as simple as, did you have a good day? You can say, what about your day was positive today? That is a really, really, really basic example that maybe you do at a dinner table, because even in families, I think there's tensions right now. And that can be in so many different ways. You do not have to see eye to eye or want to have the same answers, but asking and giving people the opportunity to give longer answers to your questions will automatically open people up more. And so the other thing when you're asking those open-ended questions is to think more about words like how and what than why. Why is an open-ended question, but it can sometimes feel judgmental, or it can feel like you're interrogating someone. So an example would be if someone in your family or your friend circle did something and you said, why did you do that? Well, hear the intonation in my voice. I could say, oh, why did you do that? Which is meant to be a little bit more open, as opposed to why did you do that, right? Which is lower. Those are the same words. But if I said something like, oh, what was it that you were hoping to accomplish when you did that? Or what was it that inspired you to do that? Or how did you try to achieve that goal? They're things that are just a little bit less direct in a way that someone could misinterpret. So think about asking open-ended questions. Think about the what if, or how, or what does that look like to you? If you're having a disagreement with someone and you know that somewhere in there there's something that has commonality, you could say, what is it that you think we could do to work together and make both of us feel better? So that's one tip, the open-ended questions. Another thing is acknowledge and validating what someone feels, even, or maybe even especially when you don't agree with it. It is separate to acknowledge and validate what someone's feeling than to agree with what someone thinks. And so another example, I'm trying to make these very general, which is sometimes harder, but another example there would be something like someone is really upset with a policy change that has just happened. And maybe you agree with it, or at least conceptually. And so there's something where you could be in complete level 2 energy, fighting about something. Or you could take a moment to say, I know this is really hard for you, and I can see that you're hurting, and I'm sorry that you're hurting. And it's understandable that you're hurting. And I don't want to see you sad. I want to be able to do something to help you feel supported or help you feel like you're not alone, even if you know that I don't agree with the policy. And that can humanize something for people, where you can get back to a place that's more mutual respect, that's more understanding that people are going to have different opinions, perspectives on things, and that there's going to be a time they stand up and they fight for what they believe, and it might be different from what you believe. But going back to how things used to work in our country, you could have Democrats and Republicans fighting it out on the floor to try to get a bill passed, but at the end of the day, going out for a drink or for dinner and talking about how they're going to get something done. Because ultimately, that is going to happen. If we were all the same, we wouldn't be experiencing the very difficult times we're experiencing now. And so I bring that up a little bit in the context of mending fences too, right? The way that we are going to get back to a place that is like that is to mend fences. It is to acknowledge and validate other people's feelings and why we got to this place, to ask open-ended questions and give people a chance to talk and hear themselves talk instead of just fighting. And then my third thing, which is finding common ground. So again, you're going to have people in your lives and you feel like you're completely in these opposite camps. And maybe there's one thing, maybe there's just one little thing that you can find that can de-escalate the difficult things and bring you back to a place where you can both kind of lower your blood pressure a little bit and check some of that negative energy and find some more positive energy. There's really small things we can do. Let's just say you can't forget topics, forget really difficult things. Is there a friend in need? And if this person's a friend of both of yours, how do you help them? Do they need some meals brought to them? Is it somebody who's sick? Is it somebody who could use a ride to an appointment? Is it somebody who's just suffering from really severe depression? Or not even really severe. Is it just someone who's suffering from depression right now? And you and another friend who might not see eye to eye on things can come together to support that friend. That's a way to find something in common that is growth oriented in terms of what it does for you and for the person that you're helping. Maybe it doesn't have to be someone in need. Maybe it's something you can celebrate. Is it a birthday? Is there a special occasion that you celebrate? Is it a retirement party? Is it a holiday? Is it just the fact that we're all still here? Find something to celebrate if there's not something to come together around of someone in need. Maybe it's something where you aren't in total opposition to the people you're trying to come together with, but there's a little bit, and maybe it's something tying it back to fiber, like how can we support small farms together? We know, farming is certainly an industry that is going to go through a lot right now, even more than ever. I'm sorry, I have wool in my nose as I tend to get. Small farms, no matter where you are in this country, there are small farms who are potentially hurting and need support more than ever. So can we come together to support small farms? And so those are just a few things. Acknowledge and validate people's feelings, ask open-ended questions, and find some common ground. And if you do any or all of those things, I promise it will help move you toward a feeling that is more positive for yourself, more positive for the community. It's not static. It's not a progression that's just going to keep getting better. It's going to be things that have ups and downs depending on what's going on in the world and what's going on in your life and what's going on in the lives of others. But when something is particularly hurtful or particularly stressful, take a moment to literally stop and breathe and tell yourself, I'm still here. I still have brains in my head and feet in my shoes, and I am going to do something today to make things a little bit better, a little bit less volatile, a little bit more positive, and I'm gonna do something. Maybe that something is really big. Maybe you are involved in a lot of activism and you've found ways to make it happen, but maybe it's really small. Maybe it's literally getting off the couch and going to the store. And wherever you are, I hope that some of that advice will help you today. So I think that's it. I want to leave you with one thought. Use the good china, burn the nice candles, and knit the special yarn. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I have been carrying around my new Tanny Casey project bag, and it has been like the most joyful thing every single time I look at it. Again, it is Friday. Code LONGWOOL in Ravelry for 20% off the pattern, and hopefully I will see some of you on Sunday. If you are at Wayland and you see me, please say hello. And if you have an Instagram username that I might know you by, please let me know that too, because I feel like we all need name tags that say our Instagram usernames or our Ravelry usernames or something like that. So knit kindly, live kindly, and I will see you again soon.